Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome to our next session. It's called the NFT For Social Good. I was amazed by the previous session, although the topic was not precisely on an NFT, but it has touched upon some aspects of NFT. So, just to remind everybody that at the end of this session, we're going to do a little bit of, there's a QR code that will be circulating that allows people to get $30 coupon for filling in some questionnaire. So my name is Yanto Chandra. So I'm the curator of this event. We designed this event many months ago because partly of academic research interest and also practical interest. And I'm so blessed that we have a number of speakers who have been able to contribute and participate. Although for today, one of the speakers is not able to be with us due to some personal emergency, and he's not in Hong Kong at the moment. So I think we'll just kickstart this. I think I just want to put everyone on the same page. It's not fun to look at definitions, but it's always useful to come together and to have being on the same page on some of the key definitional issues. We're talking about NFT, but what is actually non-fungible tokens or NFT? So basically, is a digital representation of any objects that is recorded in the blockchain or decentralized ledger and tradable using some form of virtual currencies. And it allows you or I or anyone else ownership of certain unique objects, which any kind of objects, and the objects can be authenticated and traceable in the blockchain, and it can be exchanged or traded to achieve some sort of economic or non-economic goals or reasons. So I don't go too much into that, but quickly, we're already right now at a stage of Web 3.0, which is the read, write, and own web. So what makes this spatial that is not available in the previous rounds of the internet was the ownership. So in terms of the ownership, the very purpose of Web 3.0 is actually to decentralize that sense of ownership to users instead of them being in the hands of certain centralized platforms. And part of this Web 3.0 is very much driven by the rise of the emergence of blockchain technology as an enabler, and also other supporting technologies such as file sharing systems, and of course, token systems like ERC-721, and some markets that allows this to happen. So where are we? We've heard a lot, right? We have a lot about NFT and read in the media. So one way to look at the NFT is to borrow this Gartner's life cycle of new technology, in which there's a kind of a mountain that climbs up and then it goes down, and hopefully it will level off or sort of grow in the future. So I want to kind of like bring us together in the next couple of minutes just to look at this before I introduce all the speakers. So what we have is, in the initial stage of the NFT was this interest by art technologies and gamers who have this culture of creating things. We have like curio cards, we have Spells of Genesis and other kinds of games in which people started to experiment with arts in the digital form. And later, we have seen the rise of what we call now historical NFTs, in which we have seen like crypto kitties and crypto punks and Bored Ape Yacht Club, and all these things were kind of like become the trademark of what NFT is. And a lot of people's understanding of NFT was really stopping at that level. So we are hoping that this event allows us to see this further. And a big part of what drives these NFTs to emerge was some key supporting technologies, such as these token standards that allow unique tokens to be minted and to be traded, like ERC-721 standard. And of course, a lot of markets like OpenSea and others. Of course, we have seen that the market is not doing well for OpenSea, but this is the beginning stage. And perhaps what caught a lot of people's attention as well as mine was around March 2021, the sale of a digital art, which is a digital art collage by an artist in the US called Beeple, which was sold for 70 million by one of the auction houses. It was one of the record sales and NFT, and I think we could put that it was kind of near the peak of the market. And the rise of this NFT and also the Web 3.0 is also creating a lot of this contestation. There's this contestation between those who support and believe in Web 3.0 and those who don't. And also we have been seeing some big names who are very much opposing to NFTs, but also we have seen people who really love and really truly believe that. And even among the NFT worlds, among the crypto worlds, there's a lot of contestation among the different cryptocurrencies, platforms, and owners, and things like that. Apart from that, we also see some exploration of new use cases or some affordances of what we can do apart from looking at NFTs as a form of arts. So there has been a lot of exploration to see, can it be used for music? Can it be used for ensuring the authenticity of bicycles, wine, whiskey, books, and all kind of things, and also dining experience. So there's been a lot of this exploration that has been taking place in the past. Then we enter the crypto winter around mid-2022, and with that, it also impacted the NFT world, which I call the NFT winter, because very much of the NFT transactions are conducted in cryptocurrencies, etc. Although there are some platforms that allow fiat to be exchanged in order for people to buy NFTs. And with a lot of these things that are going on, and also there are a lot of these crimes that are happening, we start to see regulators start to come in and start to offer some guardrails to help prevent the market from really collapsing, because this involves public interests. Yours and other people's money were in the NFTs market. So perhaps if I could put it that way, we are down at that bottom or the trough of that cycle, but we don't know what comes next, right? So these are the big questions that everyone is pondering. However, if you look at the data, investments by big companies and big banks into the Web3 space continues despite the crypto and the NFT winter. So a lot of crimes, and it almost, when you talk about NFT, when you hear people talking about NFT, it almost conjures up the image of a stigma. There's a kind of a stigmatization about NFT, whether you own it, whether you trade it, people will look at you with strange eyes. So this is partly because of the crimes and the massive amount of criminals that have been taking place in that space that tainted the image or the legitimacy of the sector. So this is also coming from one of my papers in which I look at affordances or the kind of different types of use cases of NFT. The first one at the top is what we already know. NFT has been used to create art, games, and collectibles. And the second one is actually what we call the phygital. The phygital is a mixture of physical and digital, such as you can get concert tickets in the form of NFTs, you can buy a music album in the form of NFTs, and books, and etc. And the next layer that is happening right now is the NFT is being used as an interface between the physical and the virtual or digital worlds. You have seen whiskey, wine, luxury watches, luxury handbags and shoes that are physical, that are attached to NFT, and that allows you to know the Nike shoes that you buy are real, or the Gucci handbag that you buy from someone is real. And perhaps another exciting development is NFT becomes an object that is widely used in a metaverse. So for example, one of the examples there is Coca-Cola and how they have created some bubble jackets and refrigerators and other things which they sell to the public. And also another one was a large international NGOs that have used NFTs to do fundraising inside a virtual gallery in Crypto Voxel, which is one of the metaverses. So there's a lot of things that could be done. So I just wanted to say that from a very humble market, it goes through the expansion, it goes through some crash, it goes to some trough, and a lot of NFTs have lost a lot of value. Some say between 60 to 70% of NFTs have lost their value. But the question now is what's next? So this is what we're going to discuss today. In particular, in relation to the theme that we are asking today, to all the speakers, we want to ask this very important question. Can NFTs be used for social good, to create social value for the betterment of the society? If so, how? And what are the opportunities, what are the risks, and what can we learn? So we have invited 4 speakers, now we have only 3, and to learn from their experience and sharing in terms of what they have in mind. So without further ado, let me just quickly introduce the speakers. And the first speaker will be Hanjin Tan. He's a musician, a singer, and one of the earliest musicians who entered into the music NFT space in Asia. And next speaker will be Mr. Joshua Chu on my left. He's a solicitor and head of risk in a large NFT marketplace, but also bigger sort of investing arm of Mavian, which is a company based in the US but has an office in Hong Kong. And then we have head of growth from Sandbox, which is Mr. Erich Wong as a third speaker. Our last speaker, Mr. Yat Siu from Animoca Brands, was unable to join us, so he sends his blessing and regards to all of you. So we're going to have each one of them to speak around 8 to 10 minutes, and we'll follow this. So we have all speakers, and at the end of this, we have a number of questions that we'll ask each other. And hopefully, at the end of that, we're going to open the floor and have your questions, and let's have a dialogue about this very exciting topic. So that's it. I stop it there. I'll pass the stage to Hanjin Tan. Hanjin, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Hi, can you guys hear me? Yes. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Can you guys hear me now that I'm sitting like this? Do I have to sit closer? No? Yes? No? This is okay? This is okay?
Yes, you look great.
Fantastic. Hi, guys. Hope you had a good lunch. It's tea time, I realize. My timetable is all messed up. I apologize for the mustache, or this half-assed mustache. I'm preparing for a role, a film I'm going to film next month, and this role requires me to have a mustache. Yuck. So, so here you are, me and my big mustache. NFTs are the most exciting thing that I have seen in the past 10, maybe even 20 years. Because it could make the big difference. It could bring autonomy, economic autonomy, back to cultural creators. I got into NFTs with a fervor about 1.5 years or so ago, because it tickled my fancy. It made me feel like, oh, finally there's something that could really be a solution to say the downfall of the music industry. I've witnessed ever since I got into the industry, some 20 odd years ago, I went from the death of the CD, the very quick birth and death of the MP3, social media, and then the birth of worldwide streaming. So now music is essentially a free good, and no matter how many charity, cultural drives, concerts, petitions are being executed, nothing can be done to make the situation better for musicians. The reason is simple. Music is not exactly broke. The major holders of all musical IPs, namely the major record labels, are still collecting licenses from the big streaming platforms like Spotify, iTunes, QQ, etc. And these license fees are the most attractive form of income that they've ever seen for the past, I don't know, 100 years maybe. Because music is a slow paying industry. Money doesn't come in immediately. It trickles in from semester to semester. In the streaming model, it comes in the form of maybe advances, and they come in quickly, and they come in steadily, and they come in with guaranteed numbers. So they the 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 incumbents are not interested in making any new change. They don't need to. They've got the money. But the problem is the money doesn't trickle down to the people who make the music. They have been less and less superstars, new superstars in the music industry in the world over the past, like, say, 40 years. There's a decline from decade to decade. And musicians, the people who create new music, are getting marginalized. And worse yet, they're not getting enough work. They can't make a living. They have to do something else. So NFTs became NFTs. I thought could like let musicians create their work, sell their work to the people who want their work, without the middleman or with the minimal middleman. And the platforms are the minimal middleman. They don't take an excess of 10%. Whereas all other forms of commerce for music takes, oh my God, in general, it takes something like close to 99%. So the trickle down effect is horrible. And so Web3 and NFTs could really do something for music. And as I started to explore NFTs, I learned that NFTs can do I learned that NFTs can do a lot more. I did 3 experiments last year. One is a simple demo of how a musician without coding can release a song and auction it off. 2, how any musician without coding can release a song and create limited supply and sell it off on an alt chain. So the first was on ETH, on OpenSea, and to solve the gas complaints, I decided to do a demo on Binance, which is 100 times cheaper than OpenSea in terms of gas, and I sold them for 7 BNB per piece, 77 short songs, 27 songs. This is another thing. Like, I believe the music in the TikTok generation is only going to make songs shorter and shorter. So I foresee that one day songs are just going to be about 30 seconds long. Maybe I'm too far ahead of the curve, but that was the idea. And the third experiment was that in the heat of PFP collections, I decided to do a demo that PFP collections, this one, the hamsters, they can be made without coding, and a similar effect can be created. So you can create your own small little community. So hamsters is a 50 people community, and it was done privately. There were no SCMs. No, there was no like mass marketing, no blasting of info or anything. It was just a bunch of people. Are you interested? I'm going to do this. And we've been doing stuff since it's been established. We've had raffles, activities, get-togethers, concerts, and I hope to grow this slowly. And this year, I'm really proud and happy that I got to launch my Sandbox game on Alpha 3. That's a big deal to me because we spent a whole year building it. I really wanted to be an Alpha 2, but like, no, couldn't make it. And I'm looking forward to the alphas in the future and the events in the future in, say, 2023. So like, hope we can make things bigger, more exciting. Hope we can incorporate music and life. Okay, enough about my personal excitement. NFTs are about GameFi assets and Web3 memberships. That is the key use case for all trending NFTs that are able to create funding. The keyword being funding. For any project to work, yes, there is the LS curve when you go, like, where you do the big pump and you come down to a lower low and you plateau and you see what's up. That's the .com effect. It happens with all new industries for new techs. And blockchains is the same. Within, and NFT being a subset of blockchain will experience the same thing. NFTs, have they fallen by 60%? No, I think NFTs, in terms of asset value, if you this is before you even factor in the depreciation of, say, the key currencies like Ether or Solana or Luna, um, have gone down beyond 90%. It is a scary drop. A lot of people have lost on paper, lost a lot of value. But that I don't think I think this is something that we have to deal with in the growing industry. Uh, However, back to the funding issue, if NFTs are crowd funded, you launch a project, um, the your market buys into the project, they flip for their personal profits and they push the value, the paper value, and this is opposed to corporate funded projects. But it doesn't change the fact that funding is essential. And now in the winter, funding is scarce. And with the Luna situation and the Solana situation and the FTT situation, um, pushing this winter, accelerating the winter a little bit faster, it makes it very hard to see, like, oh, what's going to happen next. But here's what I think is going to happen next. A disclaimer: no one has a crystal ball. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. If we did, I'll tell you the winning numbers to the next Mark 6. Um, the things that could happen are NFT as a part of the blockchain, which is the Internet of Value. So it is able to create value for certain things, certain aspects. We want it to, the market wants it to um, create cultural value for music, art, videos and movies, hopefully books, and personally, I hope magic and other forms of performing arts that have been totally murdered by Web2. Say for magic, it was the debunked videos in 210. So now nobody wants to watch a magic show anymore because I just watched that debunked video and I know how you did it. Nah, humbug. So how do you recreate value for these cultural asset classes? NFTs is a way to do it. You create it for the people. You create specifically for the market, your target market, and you have your target market consume it directly from you via something called the blockchain, which is immediate, transparent. It's immutable, which means it's extremely reliable. You can't change it, and and these are the things that don't exist in Web 2, not yet. In Web 2, it's all centralized, and you really have to read the fine print before you buy or sell anything. Before you hit the agree button, there's a lot of text to go through, and those texts are the conditions. Whereas in Web 3, the conditions are really, really simple. I create it. This is it. You buy it. You have it. So there you have a transfer of value. The other thing that this today's discussion might be more interested in is NFTs. There have been many names for NFTs, all kinds of IEIPs and IPs and formats. In a nutshell, let's just call them non-transferable NFTs. What do they do? Non-transferable NFT, unlike a regular NFT representing art, music, or a text or video or something, or a membership, is something that sticks to your is moved onto your wallet, and it stays in your wallet forever. The assumption being every human being only has one wallet, or has a couple of wallets that are tied only to them. We call this, a lot of people call them the direct IDs and discrete IDs. So you're talking about a future where your birth certificate is tied to your wallet, your all your primary school, secondary school, university grad certs are tied to your wallet. Your work performance and testimonials are all tied to your wallet. All the activities you do, say you're part of Social Enterprise Summit, so you have a POAP or a certain membership class that's tied to your wallet. So what happens? What could be would be one day in the future, you don't really need to go for a job interview anymore. You just send them your wallet address. You just send your employer wallet address, and in the glance, in one glance, I can tell, okay, what is this person? Do I want to meet him or not? And then decide to meet him and see if there is a personally you like this person. If you like his character, or if you like how he talks, or if you like how he makes you feel. But like in terms of accreditation and history, the NFTs could be a solution for all this. Now we talk about timelines. No one has a crystal ball. We don't know how fast it's going to go, but I have a good feeling that within 2 bull cycles from now, we're going to see some form of structure in the usage of NFTs. Will they be called NFTs? We don't know yet, because no one knows what Meta is going to launch and what is their baseline for their NFTs on their non-Web3 metaverse. We do not know how other AAA game companies are going to launch their Web3 solutions for, say, I don't know, God of War 14. And these are factors that we have to pay attention as well. And at the same time, scams, yes, is a bad thing, but I would urge everyone to think of it this way: if there are no scams, then you really don't want to do this. Scams happen only when there is value to scam. If something has no value, why would there be scammers? Do not think of the scammers as the cockroaches and the rats that will exist in your brand new house for the first year or two. They are pests. You don't want them. You don't like them, but they used to live there. So we should be slightly appreciative that they are there, because if there's no food in your house, there will be no rats and no cockroaches. I am positive about what's going to happen in the NFT space in the future. I urge friends to never think of NFTs as separate from crypto. It is a very scary paradigm to think that NFTs can exist directly with fiat. And the reason is simple. The whole point of NFTs and the blockchain and crypto is to decentralize, and is to bring things back to the public and to the market. And if it goes back to fiat, that means it's going to go back to huge centralized bodies. So be aware and be alert, but be optimistic and build hard.
Hello, Hanjin. Thank you so much for great sharing. And then I'll pass on the stage to our speaker here, Mr. Joshua Chu. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Yanto, for having me here. It's quite a pleasure. I did not know that we can speak virtually initially, and I would have looked so much better on screen. So now that having been said, for those of you who is not familiar with myself, I am a lawyer by training, and I have actually had the pleasure or the fortune of actually conducting Hong Kong's very first crypto litigation back in 2015. Now, I understand a lot of people's frustration with missing out on opportunities a lot, because back in 2015, when Bitcoin was only $300 to one Bitcoin at that time, my client offered to pay me millions at that time in Bitcoins. But my partner at that time at the firm I was working in said Hong Kong dollar only, hence I'm still in a suit and tie before you today. Now that is basically that summary of that miss of opportunities, why there's such a huge hype behind how people enjoy wanting to jump into crypto. But the biggest problem, of course, that we have encountered within this ecosystem is people not truly knowing what they are investing in or what they are buying. And that's actually, that's why when Yanto introduced me, he didn't know which company I should be tied in, because I have way too many companies I'm associated with, and I sound like a character from Game of Thrones. I represent, of course, Coinlectibles, Marvion, and XP as their head of legal and risk. And one of the things that we do endeavor to do is address all the risk entailed in crypto transaction. In particular, Hanjin made a good point. He doesn't know whether it's still called NFT in the future. And I can tell you positively that as a US OTC listed company, one of the things that we have to do is work very closely with the regulators. And we have actually solved a lot of intrinsic problems within this community by actually in the past, of course, NFTs have been criticized as being nothing more than a token with a hyperlink pointing to where a virtual asset is located, which is a huge risk in itself because people don't actually know what they're buying. The Bored Apes project, for example, is a classic example of risky purchase because when it was first issued, they don't have any white paper or even have the terms and condition. And it really became an afterthought that they said, oh, all holders of Bored Apes can have the IP rights associated with their Bored Apes. And and they did it by implementing it in the TNC, which can be changed at any time. Now, one of the things that my company did that is quite different is that we are creating this new tokens called digital ownership tokens. And instead of just having a hyperlink in our tokens, we actually have all the legal documentations embedded part and parcel of the tokens. This really so people will always know what they're buying. And unlike what you're seeing on the markets where prices have tanked, because Coinlectibles deal a lot with arts and antiques, we also have valuation reports associated, embedded with our token, thus basically having a stabilization effect in what we have. So in the future, what I will pivot is tools like NFTs are going to be more like documentation tools. And when regulators see that you're actually only using them to facilitate a transaction instead of selling NFT as an NFT by itself, that is where you basically get regulatory approval on the product. Now, I do not want to take up too much time on the gloom and doom of all things, of saying how Bored Apes is basically all those past projects that wasn't issued properly because they don't have any of the legal documentation or anything associated with it. I would like to spend some time on today's theme, which is how NFT can be used for social good. Now, the video behind me is actually a project on that we did for charities that demonstrate how DOTs are being issued, which is quite different from what you are getting with your traditional purchase of the NFTs. In this particular project, we have issued a collection of DOTs for a charity that they can sell for fundraising. So instead of selling mugs and T-shirts in the past, or just a sticker, which is the traditional way of doing fundraisers, NFTs have actually shown that it's actually a unique way of assisting charity and spreading their message. For example, in this particular project that's behind me, one of the interesting features is just because, aside from the fact that you're getting a very nice NFT, DOT to have the arts and IP assignments, that's another thing that we're giving out. We're giving purchasers the IP rights of the art, which is legally documented as well. You also have the ability to basically project the message of a charity behind the scene. So in the past, when you see a lot of people go to concerts, for example, or charitable concerts, all they can do is take a photo of the ticketing stub and show that I have donated for this cause. By having an NFT or DOT as your ticketing instead, the charity has the opportunity to basically embed their message, where if a person shares their DOT on their social media and they click play, they can actually see and hear the message of the charity being used for used in that regards. And another technology that we have, actually I have in front of me a 3D panel. Basically, these are what we call contactless 3D panels that we are using to showcase how you can display NFTs that people purchased uniquely. Now, a lot of times people say, why do I need to purchase an NFT that's nothing more than a token pointing to where JPEG is stored? We have always said, in our position, we have always said that application should precede the hype and all that. And in traditional art, you can't have that 3D experience by having a painting. But by having an NFT, you can have a lot more flavor with the art that you sell, including selling them, displaying them in art frames that have 3D ability. So these are all artwork. For those of you who are interested in the 3D panels I'm showing that can be part and parcel of future art collection, you can come to me afterwards on this session, of course. Now, jumping back to the charity event, of course, I'm very pleased to tell you that anyone who is interested in having a charitable NFT, we are, aside from purchasing from the official collection, which you can do on the 3D barcode behind, you can also, for any amount of donation, even $1, we're giving out WAPE NFTs as well, so you can have a feel for what the technology and what the artwork looks like moving out of this whole platform, this conference, of course. Now, I understand that I have still have a few minutes left, but I don't want to take that up because I want to save some for Q&A, because I have good news, which is Yat is joining us at the very end. And this is when I get to actually ask, and I would like to save 1 minute for myself to ask him whether he would like to donate for a good cause at the same time. So do bear with me and let me not take up too much more time afterwards. Of course, I will challenge my next speaker to also consider donating to our Nanum charity collection and working with us closely in the future.
Thank you so much, Joshua. That's so entertaining of you, and that's great. So just a quick summary. The first speaker, Hanjin Tan, talks about the benefit of NFT for musicians, and we all know the musicians, most of them actually struggling. For someone who's very famous musician or celebrities, perhaps NFT doesn't really mean a lot. But if you are getting the most of the NFT proceeds or the sales, then that is actually a great equalizer. And perhaps maybe we don't even need the social enterprise anymore if the economic system itself can distribute in that manner. And to kind of sum what Joshua just mentioned was the importance of what he called a DOT, which is actually a digital ownership token, which actually has the legal documents embedded or comes together with NFT, which is what we haven't really seen in the market. So I think this really adds into the assurance to the buyers and to the sellers.
It's really a testament of the maturity of the technology, of course. In the past, one of the things that are problematic in early days NFT is there's so little data that can be stored on the token. And one of the things that we have, of course, overcome is data cap, which enable us to upload all sorts of data on our DOTs. It's not just a legal documentation so that we can show people this is a new way of doing transactions. Of course, a lot of lawyers are not happy with me because it seems like I'm taking the jobs away, because you don't need to go to a law firm and draft papers for transactions that takes 6 months to complete. You can have instantaneous, seamless transaction. But as I've said, it's always about application of the technology. How can we bring it to real life? And these are where innovations such as the 3D panels we have that basically gives the user the ability to enjoy and have what is digital translate back into the physical. That's very important to us, which is also where I'm not trying to be a sales, of course, but this is where Eric can consider working with us for bringing his sandbox into reality. Of course, I will not take too much time and pass it on to him.
Thank you so much. So I'll pass the stage to Erich Wong, Head of Growth from Sandbox. Go ahead, Eric.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Yanto, for having me today. So you guys can see my screen. Actually, I got a PowerPoint would like to share with you guys. Yep, that's good. Okay, so let me have a quick introduction about Sandbox. The Sandbox actually is one of the largest independent user-generated content platform and gaming ecosystem. Our team works with multiple brands named to drive growth in virtual real estate. Globally, we partner with such as Warner Music Group, The Walking Dead, Snoop Dogg, Adidas as well. In Hong Kong, we recently signed a wide range of companies, including MTR, HSBC, and then Standard Chartered Bank, Regal Hotel, and also Hanjin also got his own very unique experience inside our Alpha Season 3 as well. So many of these partners purchase lands in the form of NFTs. Other users who enjoy experience and games in the sandbox acquire virtual access in the form of NFTs, cryptocurrency of fungible tokens used to buy, sell, and trade these virtual assets. To share you guys some data, we have now over 4.2 million wallet connected with Sandbox platform. And then during Alpha Season 3, we had like 40,000 daily active user on average, and also 250,000 monthly active users as well. So I would say this is kind of a very impressive numbers for metaverse projects that we are recently working on. So to moving on, actually, while NFT first come to mainstream attentions in the field of art, they are now becoming familiar in many others area of human activities, for digital collectibles to virtual goods and regular business process such as virtual riles, legal contact, and including house purchase. The use of NFT in the social enterprise is one of the more recent and exciting development that leverage their power for community engagement, greater community, and also fundraising as well. For example, by using a smart contract on the blockchain, an entire social enterprise campaign can be pre-programmed and self-fulfilling, which limits the needs for administrative follow-up and also control budget spending. Once created, digital goods can be traded in order to generate an income for creator as well. Secondary market trade on platforms such as OpenSea also continues to reward the creator with commissions thanks to the careful programming of the original smart contract. NFT also help bolster the ecosystem by delivering rewards to community members in a game or metaverse environment. For example, the campaign can be uploaded in response to changing requirement by offering utility that were not included in the original NFT means. New events and special access opportunity can be added in each cases, giving the NFT an increasingly unique appeal, helping boost community activation and also financial contribution for donors. The approach of social enterprise on the blockchain is still a very early stage, and it is certainly true that not all such programs depends on NFT for their success, but there are still some real benefit to leverage here. And at the Sandbox, actually, our team has started to pursue some mobile programs with familiar goals in the means. That's included, like the first one is, let me share you guys some example. So this is the World of Women, one of the program to support greater diversity. World of Women and the Sandbox will work together to achieve their missions to and chasing the open metaverse and encouraging more female participations through the series of interactive experience. This will occur through the WOW Foundation and will also focus on 4 main pillars. Upskilling the ecosystem by supporting artists and funding projects, education newcomers, communicating to give more visibility to women citric causes while inspiring others and giving back to charities. The fund will provide business development opportunity across the growing network of Sandbox as well, Animoca Brand and also Brain. And it also planned to support creator to guide them to success in Web3. For mentoring, for funding these first means to experience in the metaverse and their first sales. So this is one of the projects that we are already launched before actually. So and the second one, I would like to share this. It is the wave with Ukraine NFT sale. So this drop is made of one access created by Ukrainian voxel artists. So the NFT is a two-size art pieces at representations of peace, independence, but also civic residence. This where NFT will have only 200 copies, and it costs just 15 cents when we drop it. At revenue generated by the sale will totally go to the charity support the victims of the Ukraine war. So this is one of the NFT projects that how we're gonna support. We can do something to support Ukraine. And then the last one I would like to share this. This is Nori Golden Tree Auctions. It's a Go Green intervention programming environment protections project. With the job, we focusing our community to go green and strengthening our bond to the Nori at the same time. So you can see we don't have really exact a form for NFT or what exactly we can do, but actually it's all about the imagination or you can be very creative for any kind of campaign that can be worked inside the metaverse and also using the NFT as well. So yeah, this is I would like to save more time for Yat because he definitely can share more informative items for the participant today. So yeah, this is all about the NFT project and also about the Sandbox. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Eric. That's amazing. So basically, what Eric has shared is the possibility of using metaverse and NFT embedded in a metaverse to fundraise, to support various causes, but also to support environmental causes. So we kind of start to see more and more that the NFT is just a tool, it's just a resource, just like a knife, and you can make a lot of use out of this new tool. So and we are very lucky at the end to still have Yat Siu, who's going to be our last speaker. He's in Japan, if I'm not mistaken. And I think he will have something interesting to share with us. And let's, without further ado, let's welcome Yat Siu. Are you there yet?
Yes, I am. Thank you. And yeah, it was it's great to actually make it. So I'm glad to be here with my fellow sort of co-hosts. So I have a quick presentation that I'll just walk through as fast as I can, and then afterwards, obviously, we go to Q&A, which is probably the more interesting part. Very quickly, I think in the space of the non-fungible token world, Animoca Brands has basically been building in the last 5 years. We are sort of investing in the space with over 380 portfolio companies, but we're also sort of big supporters and the owners of the Sandbox. We've invested in OpenSea early days, X Infinity, Decentraland, Wax, and a whole bunch of other companies that if you're in the space, you'll probably know. And our mission really is true digital property rights and about building the shared network effect, which I'll elaborate a little bit on in the context of digital property rights. I want to I say this a lot, but I just wanted to spend just 1 or 2 minutes on this one, because at the end of the day, non-fungible tokens represents to us basically a sense of ownership over the world's most valuable resource, which is basically data. Right? And basically data from our perspective is more valuable than oil or other natural resources. But the amount that data is controlled today actually is controlled by only a small number of people, if you think about it, right? Which basically means that at the end of the day, we all work for these platforms, whether it's Facebook or Apple or Google or the games that we play. or these quasi sort of semi-metaverses in which you actually don't own your assets. In reality, we work for these platforms because we give them our data. And that data basically then gets refined into this incredible knowledge. And this knowledge basically becomes valuable. It's not the data in itself that has value, it's what the data can make. And that basically, today with blockchain, can be one that we can own, but before is owned by the platform. So every day we use Facebook and Instagram, we make them more rich, we make them more powerful. So the mental model is a little bit like, it's like the Matrix, except that we're not physically plugged in, but we are mentally plugged in. And what we have today is basically this. We're dependent on these platforms, whether it's Facebook, Google, or Apple. And what non-fungible tokens and digital property rights really represents is freedom from these platforms because they control us. Imagine for a moment if you were unable to access Facebook, if you were banned from your Instagram account, if you were unable to upload on YouTube, or you're unable to upload apps on Apple, which they can do at any given time. They can take away all your followers if you wanted to, for instance, or just appropriate them. Then your digital existence is worth nothing. So what this is really about is basically the ownership of our digital existence, which is why non-fungible tokens are so valuable. And so I think, to me, when we talk about NFTs for good, it's actually broader than just the particular applications, which many people have talked about, which are all very powerful. It's actually a much more fundamental layer, which is that actually through digital property rights, through ownership of our data, we're actually enabling a broader good as a whole as well, which is that we can own basically the assets, we can own our digital equity in a manner that we can own our physical property and our physical rights, you could say. And non-fungible tokens represents that for digital assets. And the reason why that becomes so powerful is that now that this data resides in a public ledger, in a public blockchain, it can no longer be controlled by the private sort of databases of Facebook or of Google or of Apple. It also means that we can openly compose on it. What it means, for instance, is that in the same way that we can do this with the physical world, in the digital world, I can now take a digital item and I no longer need to seek permission for that data to be used in whichever format. So if you think of it as a game item, for instance, which is a piece of data inside maybe your favorite game, it can be used by any other game in the world. And the only interface that is needed is to interact with the customer who owns that. Now, in the physical world, we do this all the time. I mean, the fact that you own a car is the reason why Uber can exist, is the reason why I can go and offer you a service for a mechanic or car wash or driver or leather seats or electronics for your cars. The ecosystem of cars is much, much greater than the sale of cars itself. But imagine in a world where every time you want to implement a service into the car, or a leather seat, or a baby seat, or a service to the car, you have to seek permission from Tesla. And Tesla will say, well, maybe you can use it, and by the way, I'll charge you 30 to 50% every time you do that. That's the digital world today, which is why innovation is stifled, and there is no actual freedom in this environment. And so that actually allows for this paradigm of ownership, allows for all of these sort of freedom to transact and peer-to-peer ownership economics to basically accelerate. And all the things you're seeing today that is now possible with NFTs, as Eric pointed out, and there's so many things that we can't even imagine that non-fungible tokens can do, because now we have the freedom of everyone in the world to invent new things without needing permission from the platform. They can do so simply by talking to the people who own it. Every person, for instance, who's playing Fortnite, their skins could be, for instance, if it wasn't blockchain, as NFTs, could be exported. And someone else could, run Fortnite Fashion Week, for instance, without actually having to seek permission from Epic. It's a much better experience for the end user. And it's also more creative and offers much more possibilities as we see in the physical world. And basically what happens is that it becomes a way for you to own and partake in the network effect of that digital property. So what we mean here, for instance, is that when you, for instance, own land, for instance, in something like Sandbox, you're not just simply a customer consumer. You become a customer owner. You have the ability now to actually partake in the potential growth of Sandbox as an ecosystem. You're no longer just consuming. You can participate in that growth itself, meaning you share the network effect. In the same way that if you own a house in Hong Kong, right, you can participate in the growth of Hong Kong if Hong Kong grows, for instance, right? If it's successful, then you are actually within itself a kind of stakeholder. And the more network effects you have with it, the more valuable it is. Just think about the parallel cars I gave as an example. If the car was only used in the way that it was designed for, 130 years ago, to take you from point A to point B, then all cars would look the same as Henry Ford had designed and will probably have just a simple utility. But today, think about why you buy a car. You might buy a car for transportation, but 99% of the reason you buy it for other things, the way it looks, what people say. Is it beautiful? Is it carbon friendly? Is it what does it say about me? Meaning that the social aspect and the actual virtual value aspect is actually the real reason you buy it. And the network effects embedded is a part of that. Is it famous? Who talks about it? What does it mean? Everything in our life is like this, whether it's our clothes, our fashion, our items, even where we live. Even in districts like Sandbox, you have places that are more expensive and less expensive precisely for those kind of invisible network effects that we may not be able to quantify. So we see this already in gaming. You can do loans, you can do other things. And I just wanted to sort of point a few examples that maybe the audience may not be fully aware of. For instance, play to earn or play and earn, for instance, which is the GameFi phenomenon. That's basically where you can basically earn money playing games. During COVID, people in the Philippines, basically this became their primary income, where they were making maybe not a lot of money, $25 or $50 a month, but that was basically life-changing money for them because they were able to survive. And really, all it really does is it takes the money from the value from the gaming economy, which is basically already the biggest sort of entertainment industry in the world, and shares it appropriately because of digital property rights across basically the players, which is something that game companies don't want you to know about. But these game companies make lots of profit. And this basically is just a way to share that value basically to the players who give value, because after all, people who play the games for free actually deliver value for this as well. But another example for this is, what happens when you have digital property rights is you have capital formation. And what that means is that you can take a piece of content that might generate earnings. Let's say, for instance, what TinyTap did with teaching content. A piece of teaching content that might be worth $1,000 or $2,000 a year in income. Now it's no longer just rental because someone can own it. By owning it, they actually have an ability to own a part of that yield by becoming a publisher. In so doing, they can actually then give capital formation to those teachers. In the same way that when you look at a house, and the house might make a certain rental income, that can inform of the value that you're willing to pay for the house, not just because you can live in it, but because it has the ability to earn a certain kind of rent. And now these teachers, with the teaching income that they've generated, were able to sell it for the same kind of capital formation, generating literally 1 year's worth of their salary in their first NFT sale for the first six teachers. We've seen versions of this with art, of course. We've seen this from areas of charity. And of course, we've seen this also, in gaming, which is why digital assets that have true ownership are all sold for more value. Maybe you could argue too much value relative to basically the other gaming sort of assets that exist basically as only rental, because of the same, rental is never going to be the same value as ownership has. I just want to close with this quick commentary. This is an example, since we're talking about NFTs for good. This was an NFT card that was sold for charity originally for the Australian bushfire many years ago when there was fires in Australia. And it sold for $8,000 that went to charity. But when it resold for $430,000 from another person, the secondary royalties it generated was over $30,000. That went to charity as well. So in the same way that they can benefit artists or teachers, also for charity projects, they can create basically sustainable revenue income streams from NFTs that could be sold because they can partake in secondary fees, which has been a topic of debate, but is, I think, being resolved at this moment in time. So I think the thing to think of blockchain, generally speaking, and what's seen in metaverse with non-fungible tokens and property rights, is that these are new national economies that are emerging today. Basically, that means that you think of each system basically as a true economy. You measure them in terms of GDPs. Right, which means that new economic opportunities come about. Like when you look at Sandbox, you look at how many people are employed in the Sandbox, for instance. What kind of jobs are created, as opposed to how many users there are particularly. Because if you take the same number of users of something like Sandbox or Axie Infinity, and you basically place them with an economic factor, like in a small city or village, then the economic activity becomes very rich. And that's basically how one should view basically what we see with non-fungible tokens with property rights. So I'll close with this. And I think this is the fundamental of it all. In terms of when we talk about NFTs for good, it represents digital property rights. Just as George Washington said, freedom and property rights are inseparable. You can't have one without the other. And we can't have true digital freedom without true digital property rights. Thank you.
That's truly wonderful, Yat Siu. Thank you so much. So what Yat Siu has been sharing with us is the ownership that people have by owning NFTs, and secondly, the network effect that needs to be there for NFT to keep growing. And more importantly, he really mentioned about the real use cases of NFTs for actually social purposes, for charities and to help the teachers. Imagine your teachers are able to raise funds selling their books or selling their creations, which enable them to do better for schools and for students and things like that. So I think, so I think we have talked a lot about NFTs for social causes, for social reasons. We're going to do now the next session, which is a little panel discussion about a couple of questions that we have prepared. And let's do these questions and quickly go through them, and then we open the floor to the audience for some interactions. The first question is, we know that much has changed since in the past 6 months in the NFT space. My question is, will NFTs still be around in the next couple of years? What will it look like? I've mentioned in the social media, perhaps because of the stigma associated with NFT, you might need a new name, a new rebranding, a new reframing of what NFT is. So that's what I would like to hope to hear from speakers. Who would like to take this question?
Well, I think in the very near future, like what we have been doing is we have been reinventing NFTs into what we call digital ownership tokens. And one of the very crucial elements of the success behind DOTs is the fact that we have the Ricardian contracts implemented, because there have been a number of cases in common law saying that NFTs by itself cannot exist as a legally binding contract. You have to fulfill all the legal elements of it, and that's where we're seeing the trend is, because we have worked with regulators and they have actually quite endorsed the process in this respect. Now, what I see, or my view in particular, is that DOTs, NFTs are nothing more than a new form of documentation tools that can really bring commercial transaction to the digital age. And you don't need new laws just to regulate how Microsoft Word is being used, even though that really changed how the industry, legal industry practice has been done in terms of drafting, of course. But I would love to hear the views of others in the panel.
Maybe I'll just quickly add to that. I think, first of all, when you think about non-fungible token transactions, just talk about market first and then we'll talk about legal stuff. The market side is actually transaction volumes is actually not reduced. I mean, from the peak maybe in December and January, yes, but if you look at, for instance, the last 6 months, it's actually increased over time. What's happened, though, is that the total value has come down because tokens value has come down. So basically, transaction volume is up, but actual token prices are down, which is why people talk about, smaller sort of, NFT sales are down, but they're comparing it based on prices, not on activity. The second thing that's changed is that the quantum of people that are using NFTs is much larger. So when they use them in a game, they don't sell it. In the same way, you don't buy a car to sell right away. I mean, some people might, but most people don't, right? Most people buy the car so they would use it. And that's actually what's happening today. So comparing it to 2021, which was frankly a more speculative market at the time because a lot of people just used it as avenue of growth, when the market started to come down, actually the true believers started to become active in the space. So for instance, as tragic as what's happened with FTX is, the people who play blockchain games were generally not touched by this because they don't trade on FTX. And so I think we need to make a distinction between the two, which is there is a crypto Wall Street, which is mostly affected and which is what the media is talking about. And there's basically more sort of the tech and utility sort of blockchain segment, basically the ones who are using it for its actual underlying sort of underlying values and possibilities. Now, speaking on the legal side of things, one of the troubling things right now is that data in itself isn't a legal construct, so it is, it's governed under contract law. So what then is embedded inside the contract, basically, or the legal documentation, which is being addressed, by other people, like here on the panel, or for instance, separately with Yuga, or separately with Cool Cats, or ourselves, there's a discovery as to what's the best way to encapsulate basically the legal part of it, which is currently under contract law. What rights do you have when you own these tokens? So that they become enforceable in essentially the existing law. Like, for instance, what happens when there's theft, for instance, or if you don't utilize it in the right way, then, do we remove utility, or do we blacklist you, or like, what are the rules around that? Those are things that basically need to be determined. I think long-term, though, there will be regulation around, to me, from the perspective of actually creating, having sort of true digital property rights. Because if we get to a point where digital property rights can be treated the same as physical property rights, which I think is part of the challenge, then many of the underlying things that we see today in the tech world will change to the benefits of its consumers, broadly speaking, like we have physical property rights. But obviously that is part of the challenge. In the meantime, we're all trying to address this in digital terms. Just to close, for instance, I don't believe that any of the gamers out there don't want to own their assets. They may not like they may fear financification because they're afraid of things becoming expensive. But when you say, value aside, when you say, do you think you should own these items? Is it better for you to actually have real ownership? Every gamer, which is 3.4 billion people in the world, which is most of the people on the internet, is going to say, yes, of course I want to own it, right? Or maybe it's even, why don't I already own it? So I think, mentally speaking, we're here. I think of blockchain not just as a ledger. Yes, it is a ledger, it's a digital technology, but its implications are political, it's social, right? It's deeper than the pure technology. It's like the internet. The internet is really, if you think about it, just a way to connect people, but its implications were social and political, and I think of blockchain in the same way.
Well, I would just add that there are actually two type of laws being developed. There's the regulatory side, which is because that's a buzzword on everybody's lips. But the reality is laws are also developed in the courts. That's why I used to be a litigator, and that's where I enjoy a lot developing new law. That's why I had to focus on technology law. And I would say that we are actually ahead of the legislature in terms of passing law, in developing the type of law that are recognizing data as legally binding contract. That's where we have the Ricardian contract principle that I'm more than happy to share with each of my fellow panelists because of the restriction of time, of course. But we do have existing law that actually governs how we can actually turn smart contract into real contract. And there's huge potential for it because smart contract is a way that can resolve a lot of our real life disputes problem. One of the things that I've written for the Law Society about, for example, is about crypto wills. And if you have wills that are placed and programmed by smart contract, you remove the human elements that is always at the roots of a lot of the litigation in society. So I would say that technology has a huge impact, contribution towards improving society as a whole in the future, provided that we have the right players in position to advance it properly.
Thank you so much. I don't know your own experience, but in my own experience, the first time I came into the Web3, including the NFT space and metaverse, was through reading news articles and watching a lot of YouTube. Like, if there's any of these terminologies that we've been talking about that you're not very clear about them, don't worry. You can always go back and check what those terms really mean. So I think this goes to the next question that I'm going to raise about the risks and challenges of the NFTs for lay person or lay man, lay women. Like, if you don't have any clue what it is, what do you need to know about the risk and challenges of buying or selling or owning NFTs? So I think I'll pass this question to the other two speakers, Hanjin and Erich. Do you have anything to share about the risks and challenges of NFT that lay person need to know?
Risk is the...
Yeah, Hanjin first.
You want to go, Erich?
Yeah, you go first. Thank you.
No, go ahead, Erich.
Okay, so self-custody of NFT is actually very important trend that has received greater performance recently due to the issue on crypto exchange. Of course, NFT uniquely registered on the blockchain, which makes them different from cryptocurrency as well. Similarly to real-world assets, NFT are less frequently traded and facilitated much less in value. However, they are still blockchains based on no centralized control. So they must be careful managed by the individual owners. This is where self-custody become properties, and decisions must be carefully take on what kind of wallet to use and how to carefully balance security with competence when it comes to managing digital assets as well. So this is a barrier to entry and effective ongoing management of NFT that each individual must address. Still a very early stage that I always share with the because we are running some offline event as well. So there's still many people that they even though not starting to have their own the first crypto wallet as well. So I think education part is one of the items that we are really working so hard on to let the public users understand more about it. I think it takes time, but I would say there's a lot of partners from Sandbox, and also because they are also going to develop their own project as well. So everyone, they are aiming to do sharing and also the education to the public users. So I think to increase this self-knowledge about the digital security issue, it is very important for the future, for you to try and then to get your first NFT as well. Yeah, this is what we are thinking about. So Hanjin, how about you?
Hi. Okay, I'll keep it simple. Layman risks for messing around with NFTs and Web3 and blockchain and all things crypto. I think we can be. I think the easiest way to understand it would be to break it down into 3 segments. The first one is the obvious one. You need a proxy. It's kind of like if you want to play tennis, you need a tennis racket and you need balls, or like. So like if you want to mess with NFTs, you need a wallet. Your wallet is your Web3 proxy. So first thing you need to learn, the first risk you need to take is the educational bottleneck. What is a wallet? Where do you start? Do you know nothing about it? Start with the MetaMask. Talk to the guys at Consensus. They know what they're doing. They've been doing it for a long time. And then figure out other wallets. Like maybe you want to work on a more functional smart hot wallet, like a trust wallet. And maybe you're starting to buy expensive stuff and you need to get a cold wallet. So that's part 1, wallets. That's your proxy. That's your tennis racket. And 2, what are you buying and why are you buying it? So there are 2 kinds of purchases really. Art collectors like to think of it. They like to use the paradigm of do you love it? Will you still love it when the value falls? Will you hold on to it? Will you still like looking at it in your living room? Likewise, non-functional NFTs with minimum utilities, you have to ask yourself that question. Do you love it enough? Will you still hang on to it? It's kind of like a trading card. I've got this Gundam trading card. I've got this baseball trading card that I'm going to hang on to my dear life. I'm going to pass it on to my kid. Now, if you can answer that question that way, then there is intrinsic value to you as a buyer, with or without its market value. Then do it. And the third one is utility. Utility is a tricky word. Sometimes there's so many projects that are like, oh, this is our utility, and it turns out to be kind of scammy. They're not delivering. They're kind of lying about it. But what will you do with it? Will you do something with it? And if there's something that you will do with it, for instance, you're going to buy this, say, I don't know, the gaming part is really obvious. You buy it because you want to own it, and you own it so you can use it and play it, and then you can buy more stuff, and you can become like this really OP in your game because you own so many assets and you own it, and one day you don't want to play it, you can sell it off to someone else who wants to be OP. That makes sense. Another form of utility would be like, say, like, okay, the Fly Fish Club, and you own rights to enter this restaurant that you will not be able to walk into for another couple of years, but you find that useful. You find that something I want to have, I want to do. Go for it. There are also many PFP style NFT projects that seem to have no utility, but the moment they get famous, they become a membership. They become sort of a gating membership card. And that in itself is also a utility. Do you personally see a value in that utility? If you do, then don't sell it. And if you no longer see the value of that utility, then maybe you want to sell it. So like these are the inherent risks for any layman coming into the NFT circuits. What is its value on paper or on the computer screen? But more importantly, what is its value to you? What will you do with it? And most importantly, you need your proxy. You need a tennis racket.
Thank you so much, both of you. That's wonderful. So I will not go through the rest of the questions because I think we will more or less have covered them. So I would like to use the rest of the time, maybe we have another 20 minutes or so, to the Q&A with the floor. And let's open up any questions. Let's take some questions from the floor. And we have some microphones that will follow you if you raise your hands. Yes, there's one over there and one over there.
Hi, I'm Noah, Noah Barry, which is a travel platform. But Hanji just inspired me. I mean, I keep thinking about the same conversation like Hanji mentioned about the second thing, do you really love it? And the third one, utility. I want to, based on that question, to double check with Yat Siu. Okay, because I heard you mentioned about one example when our kids or our grandson, one day they don't want red pocket, they just want NFT. Yeah, I remember you say that. So I want to base on that utility things and based on our next generation. So how do you emphasize the difference? I mean, okay, let's say our kids one day will ask me for one NFT rather than a red pocket on CNY. So what does it like if it really happen? I just want to imagine, or okay, if it really happen, what is going on afterwards?
Yeah. So I think the first thing to think about is rather than NFT, I think I talked about sort of actual digital ownership, right? Meaning that if you ask your children already today, regardless of whether they know what an NFT is, they will probably want something virtual, right? So they probably want Robux from Roblox, or they want something so they can buy skins in Fortnite, or in Apex Legends, or their favorite games, or maybe something they can buy and use in the Sandbox. So those items are already inherently virtual. So you ask the question, so why would they want this instead of, physical Nikes or something sort of physical, because maybe that's what you want? And that has a lot to do with the social status that virtual items confer on children today. And this isn't just because of COVID, it's because of the fact that all their friends hang out. What do you think that, your children are doing, how are they relaxing? They're actually probably playing a game. Who are they playing the game with? They're not playing it alone. They're playing with other friends. What is the social status that they signify in terms of, their achievements or their presence? It is social ownership. Now, we do this in the physical world as well. Back in the day, the kind of shoes we had, if we had Levi's 501s, if we had certain kind of handbags, or if we had basically certain kind of items, we would signify those values basically in the physical world. That's what we're seeing in the digital world. And the average person, for instance, in Hong Kong, spends around 7 to 8 hours online already, right? And actually in places like Korea, it's actually 10 hours per day, which means that they're already spending more time digitally than they're spending physically. Think of it slightly differently. How many people, for instance, that you know yourself actually really obsess about how many likes they get on Twitter or on Facebook or on Instagram, or how many followers they have on TikTok, for instance? Actually, especially as they're younger, that's more important to them. And that basically is another form of digital status. It's not like the same as saying owning an NFT, but it's a step one of my social status digitally is more important than my physical one. So that's kind of how that translates in terms of meaning. Now, for you as a parent, how do you interact with that? Well, you have to be part of that world. The digital world, speaking of adoption, the digital world right now is anyway the playground of our children and the future generation. It is not our playground. So we need to understand that. We are immigrants, they are natives. So in order to understand this, we have to come to them, not them to us. That means we have to enter their world. We have to understand it. And I think one of the very empowering things is you ask them to teach you, for instance. Actually, it's really interesting because it brings them to an interesting level playing field where you would learn something and give back to them. They would be excited about it because in that world, they're actually much better than you. So that's one of the other things that I think is really interesting. But as adults, you have values to offer, not about good and bad. You can talk to them about sort of value of money, of what it means, right? And it's so meaning there's not much difference between the physical and the digital world on these areas. It's just that the medium is different, but the actual life experience is, if you think about it, not that different.
So just about our parents need to learn social media to understand our world. Perhaps we will need to learn metaverse to understand our next generation's world. Thank you so much, Yat Siu. Do you have another questions there? Yes, please.
Hi. Thank you for sharing. We all know that there are many advantages on NFT for digital artworks or digital properties. For example, the resale gain towards the original creator. But how do you see the application of NFT onto conventional artworks like paintings, sculptures, or like tangible artworks? Because we all know the advantages of NFTs for digital artworks, but there are like artist resale rights that are not like transferable to conventional artworks. So how do you see the application of that onto like physical artworks?
Who would like to take the question?
Well, I can answer that question because we work a lot with the auction houses for a lot of our arts and collectibles, especially on the collectible side of business. And what a lot of people do not understand, do not realize actually, is when you buy a piece of painting from the auction house, you're only acquiring the physical object, but not any of the IP rights. One of the things that advantages behind utilizing NFT or DOTs in these transactions is that you can actually have digital cloning of individual objects. So it translates to a lot more value for not just the traditional artists per se, but even all the auction houses that we are working with. I have the 3D tablet for me, for example, is a classic example of some of the work that we have done with artists, where they actually commission us to 3D render the 2D paintings, so that the purchasers, the people buying the artwork can have a very different, unique experience to it. Not only are they getting the physical painting, they're also getting the digital file that can be that are 3D rendered by artificial intelligence, that they can experience the artwork in a very different settings, plus all the packaging that is involved. So we see this as I couldn't put it better than how the Monetary Authority of Singapore put it. NFT is going to enable a lot of parties, especially artists, to commercialize what is previously uncommercialized. And all that could, of course, if you have a comprehensive suite of tools to solve for artists in particular, you can really package it in one solution for many artists in the wider industry. Of course, our focus is working with artists on the Marvian front, as well as sculptures and collectibles for the collectible side. And we have seen an unlocking of a lot of values in this respect. The other experience that we have is in China, of course. Under Chinese law, you're not allowed to basically export Chinese antiques. But a lot of the museums are actually getting around to finding out that there's actually a huge opportunity when you tokenize the IP rights of their exhibits, which is why we're actually helping a lot of museum monetizing a lot of the exhibits that's previously not something monetizable. And in turn, they are getting the funding they need to operate. And it's always been tough for museums to operate. The Smithsonian, for example, is famous for only, if you are stuck in the physical world, the exhibits are only less than 1 or 2% of the total inventory. But when you bring it to the digital, you open a whole new realm. For example, if we're doing the campus land project for Hong Kong U, and if we work with Sandbox, for example, we can basically unlock the potential. You're no longer restricted by physical constraints in the virtual world, because you can do so much more. But I don't want to go on a tangent, but I hope I answered that question.
Can I share something about the physical art pieces? Because actually we do have a project in Hong Kong. Actually, it's for the Fine Art Asia. So they got like 4 physical pieces of art pieces that they try to they want to empower those story on behind the art pieces. So that's why some of our studio proposed that they can create a game for the art piece. So for the people who enjoying the art, they are not just only looking for the physical item, but they can also to enjoy or experience the behind of the story. And also, I think this is kind of one of the new experience that what metaverse can do also. So talking about physical art and also digital art, I think there could be a very big improve in the futures as well.
Thank you so much. So hope that answers your questions. Do we have other questions? Okay, while waiting the next questions, I have perhaps one more questions here. that any of the speakers can pick up. It's about policymakers. Different countries, different policymakers have different take with regard to NFT and even the metaverse. What kind of policy do we need, in your view? What kind of policies do we need for the NFT and the metaverse to go mainstream, perhaps?
Well, I think Yanto mentioned that I'm working with Collectibles, Marvel, and XP, but another company that I'm actually working for, I'm a senior consultant with ProSynergy, which is actually a company that was started by the former director at the SFC. Now, that's a shiny part of his career, but I always make fun of him for also being the director that approved the Lehman Brothers bonds back in the day, and he's never happy with me bringing this up. But one of the key features about that company is he also wrote the structured product code. And as a result, we have a lot of leverage when it comes to dealing with regulators because they're much more inclined to listen to us. They're not going to listen to a law firm. Law firms, lawyers, regulators are actually quite discriminatory to them because they're just lawyers, and legal opinions a lot of times half the time is wrong. On the other hand, if you're talking about former regulators like ProSynergy and ourselves, we have actually been engaged in a long process of working with the SFC from all the way back in the day when it was still in the Sandbox. I'm talking about the SFC Sandbox, of course. We actually advised all of the exchanges during that time, and we actually got ProSynergy also advised on the 2 license exchange that got the Type 7 license in Hong Kong. And one of the key part in why we're so successful in helping these companies being able to basically guide them through the regulatory process is because we're able to take on the role of educating the regulators as well. So education is one of the keys, educating them into understanding what is the industry, what's the potential of the technology. Of course, we do have, for those of you who are familiar with dealing with the SFC, we also have the issue of brain drain, because when you educate some of the regulators and they become a believer, they tend to try to go private afterwards. So that's another issue, of course.
Yeah, maybe just to add to this, I think regulation, generally speaking, I think there needs to be a division right now, I think, which not all regulators, I think Hong Kong is much more advanced compared to many other places. Japan, for instance, is quite advanced as well, as an example, where they're pushing forward, and the ministry has put Web3 and the metaverse actually as part of national agenda. But I think there should be a distinction between, I guess, as we described with the Wall Street crypto side, which is the part that does need quite a bit of regulation, because it basically is no different than dealing with the money policies that we deal in the physical world. And then, of course, there's the sort of tech and sort of the utility NFTs that are maybe slightly different and have actual different applications. But because they intertwine as much, there needs to be obviously some kind of clarity. And I think the clarity part is the risky thing, because if people just don't do anything, then people don't know what their boundaries are. And then we have some of these sort of effects that have taken place. But there are cautionary tales to regulation, because on one hand, regulation is intended to protect, but if it's over-regulated, for instance, if you look at what happened with the GDPR in Europe, it was with good intentions, which is basically to protect data privacy, to ensure that big tech companies don't abuse their data rights. But the consequence of it was that by creating too much burden, it's basically canceled out any small business that was trying to do anything with data, therefore actually giving anyone who has the firepower and the money to deal with regulatory hurdles an advantage, and actually killing off the small data businesses in Europe as a result, right? So the intentions are the positive ones. It's the effect, and I think as an industry, to the point earlier, we need to obviously educate, we need to advocate as to the positive steps, and I think more so now than ever.
I would add my experience with regulators is that, not the Hong Kong ones, of course. I always joke that if you survive the SEC, you can pretty much survive any regulators on the planet, because they usually throw the hardest questions out. But at the end of the day, one of the funnier things I see is it's also alternative taxation, because you never see the regulators going after the small companies. You always see GDPR, for example, they make, if you look at the prosecution, the list of fines that they're getting, they're always targeting the giants, the big data holders at the end of the day, Google, H&M even. So it's actually alternative form of taxation. That's what it feels like.
So new source of income for governments, and that's also a reason why they have been embracing the crypto and building policies around it as well. Do we have other questions?
Well, I just have one last question for the rest of the panel. As I've mentioned, I am running my own charity NFT projects, and I would love to drop each of my fellow panelists one of the charity NFTs, and hope that I can encourage you to actually donate for the cause as well. And I would love to work with each of you on some of my future products.
Will it go to each of our accounts, our wallets?
Yes, we'll set it up for you in case if you don't have wallet, like Hanjin mentioned. One of the biggest problem we have, we actually acquired a wallet solution that is fully integrated to a chat room program called Talk Plus. I'll get my colleagues to set it up for you if you need to.
Do you offer NFTs to the audience in wallets?
I will offer anyone that would like to reach out a WAPE NFT today. But of course, we take any donations for the charity that we are helping as well. But I think there's actually huge potential for social good in this part, which is how I hope we can wrap this session up.
That's really amazing. I think we are just very good in timing, just 30-something seconds. A little longer than what we expected, so that's great. So if you are all here, I could say that you are still at the early stage in this market, in this Web 3.0, in which, so I'm grateful that you're all here, and I was thinking I would not have this crowd, would have fewer people turning up, so this is amazing. So thank you so much for all of you for your participation. If you have any further questions, you can always ask or approach us here, or I'm sure you can reach out to Hanjin and Erich and Yat Siu and through their websites. So yeah, I think let's take a photo with these three handsome gentlemen and another two handsome gentlemen over here. So before everything is disappearing. Thank you so much. Just one last point. I was asked that there will be a QR code to do survey for all of you here with the chance of winning something. So there's a prize. So that is beyond this NFT prize from Joshua. So it will be shown on the screen in a moment. So I think with that regard, I would like to put this to a close. And I would like to thank all the great speakers, Yat Siu, Hanjin, Erich, and definitely Joshua. And we're all friends now. And we're all friends with you all too. And do reach out and let's stay in touch. And hopefully we're going to see something more interesting coming up in the next couple of years in this NFT and Web3 space. Thank you so much, everyone. See you.